Hello everyone, I hope this video finds you well and safe. This is Hamid. I'm happy and so delighted to have you again in another video. Today's video is going to be about cognitive theory of learning. I just would like to start by telling how impressed I am with the principles and implications of this theory. All of these implications, principles and other aspects will have been covered by the end of this video, inshallah. So stay tuned and let's get started. The outline of this video is as follows. The first thing we are going to see is a demonstration to cognitive approach. Secondly, we will come across the cognitive development theory of Jean Piaget. We will also shed light on the stages of cognitive development suggested by Jean Piaget. And finally, I will set some implications of Piaget's theory on the practice of education. Yeah, let's make a start. Cognitive approach in general focuses on the mental processes and describes how human mind thinks, understands and learns. Based on this reading, we clearly deduce that cognitive approach mainly concerns the human brain. To make this more clear, let's make a distinction between this approach and behaviorism. Cognitivism studies the human brain. On the other hand, behaviorism studies the human behaviors, and all of which try to discover and make clear how learning takes place. We have already seen how learning takes place according to behaviorism. Specifically in the previous videos, you can find their links in the description. In this video, I will explain how cognitivism on its side describes learning. This is Jean Piaget in the picture. He is actually a popular theorist. The origin of cognitive approach is linked to his theory of cognitive development. Jean Piaget studied his children to come up with cognitive development theory that describes the cognitive development of individuals in their first years. So, the main concern of this theory is the cognitive development of individuals, and this involves learning as well. So, how does cognitive development theory see learning? Cognitive development theory promotes the constructivist view toward learning. Constructivism emphasizes that learners actively construct their own knowledge by experience and interaction with the real world. Based on this reading, cognitive development theory adopts the constructivist view toward learning, and learning based on constructivism is a process which is active. This means that learners actively construct their own knowledge by experience. As you can see here, there are some keywords in red color: knowledge, experience. Let's investigate these keywords. We will do so, but first, let's take a look at this picture and analyze what is going on in it. Afterward, we are supposed to answer these questions. You can pause the video if you need more time. First, let's describe what is going on in this picture. As you can see, there is a human hand which is approaching the candle flame and touching it. Based on this picture, what is the experience that is being conducted, and what is the knowledge the person constructs or learns from the experience? The experience is touching the flame, and the knowledge he learns from this experience is that touching the flame is hurtful. According to what has been said, the person constructed a knowledge by doing an experience with the real-world object, that is the candle flame. So far, we know how Jean Piaget sees learning. Now, we are going to cover some concepts that he used to describe what is going on in the learner's mind while learning. Piaget believes that learners develop patterns of behavior or thinking called schemes while learning. Assimilation takes place when learners confront information that fits into the existing scheme. Accommodation takes place when learners encounter information that does not fit into the existing scheme, and so they create new scheme in light of new information or a new experience. This is a visual illustration to these concepts. As you can see in this picture, there is a baby in different situations. Let's read the situation E. Banging is a favorite scheme used by babies to explore their world. The baby in this situation holds a toy and bangs it. Now, let's read the situation B. Assimilation occurs when they incorporate new object into the scheme. As you can notice in situation B, the baby holds a new object that is different from the previous one, and he tries the same scheme on it. But nothing special happened. This is called assimilation, and it happens when the new object fits the existing scheme. Now, let's investigate the situation C. It says that accommodation occurs when a new object doesn't fit the existing scheme. Look at the baby in situation C. He seems upset, doesn't he? Yeah, this is because of the consequence of the banging scheme. The baby tried the banging scheme on the egg, and this resulted in the egg being broken. So this egg doesn't fit the existing scheme, and this is called accommodation. The baby in this situation is going to develop a new scheme to deal with eggs in particular. These are two extra concepts used by Jean Piaget. Disequilibrium takes place when learners have to deal with situations that could not be fully handled by existing schemes. To clarify this concept, let's go back to the previous slide. So, in which situation do you think disequilibrium happened? Look at the situation C. The baby here seems upset because the new situation cannot be totally handled by the existing scheme. So disequilibrium happens exactly when there is an absence of balance. The second extra concept is equilibration, and it happens when learners develop new schemes or adapt old ones until equilibration is restored. This includes the two processes, assimilation and accommodation. Here is another principle of cognitive development theory. According to Piaget, learners actively construct their own knowledge based on their pre-existing or prior knowledge. This actually means that over our existing knowledge we construct new knowledge, or in other words, as we have seen in the baby's situation, the baby always relies on his existing scheme to evaluate new knowledge. So based on this pre-existing knowledge, he assimilates or accommodates new information. In this slide, we are going to see some classroom examples of scheme assimilation and accommodation. A high school student has a studying scheme that involves putting information on cards and memorizing the cards' contents. She has had success with this in one subject and applied the same scheme to many subjects. What is the scheme here? The scheme is putting information on cards and memorizing the cards' content. This is a strategy which has been used by the high school student to study. Assimilation happens when this strategy is always successful with some subjects, but when it doesn't work, this is called accommodation. This is what we are going to see in the next classroom example. The classroom example of accommodation is as follows. A high school student studies only by means of memorization. He encounters some topics in which memorization does not work very well. So here, there is a sense of disequilibrium because there is a topic that cannot be totally handled by the existing scheme. Let's read the third statement. He learns to use different strategies such as discussing difficult concepts with a friend to study these subjects. This is accommodation here, when the student develop a new strategy to deal with a certain situation or to deal with subjects in which the old scheme doesn't actually work. Now we reach the slide in which we are going to talk about the stages of cognitive development. Let's read these paragraphs. Piaget describes how children construct their knowledge following protected stages of development that cannot be skipped. Each stage is characterized by the emergence of new abilities and ways of processing information. So far we have seen how Piaget regards learning and explained how learning operates for him. Now we are going to enlighten the stages of development each individual passes through, and also we will shed light on the abilities that characterize each stage. So let's move on to the next slide. Here are the 4 stages of development Piaget suggested. The first stage is sensory motor stage. It starts from the birth to the age of 2 years old. During this stage, children discover their world by using senses. The second stage is pre-operational stage, and it starts from the age of 2 years old to 7 years old. Throughout this stage, children start to think and use symbols to describe real-world objects. And in this specific stage, individuals start to use language. The third stage of development is called concrete operational stage. It starts from 7 years old to 11 years old. During this stage, children can perform some logical and mathematical activities. The last stage is operational stage, and it starts from the age of 11 years old to adulthood. In this stage, individuals develop abstract thinking and hypothetical reasoning. So each one of these stages is characterized by the emergence of certain abilities. For example, Piaget argued that children in pre-operational stage start to grasp the object permanence, that is, they develop the ability to understand that objects exist even if we hide them. Because children in sensory motor stage think that objects are gone if we hide them. In the pre-operational stage, also children are characterized by centration. This means that children in this stage pay attention to one aspect of a situation and do not consider other aspects. This is apparently manifested in one of Piaget's discoveries. He discovered that children are characterized by the absence of conservation principle. For example, if we pour milk from a tall, narrow container into a shallow, wide one, the pre-operational child may think that tall, narrow container has more milk than the wide, shallow one, even if they have the same amount of milk. Moreover, in the operational stage, individuals develop hypothetical reasoning, that is, they can think about things that they have never experienced. In this slide, we are going to shed light on some implications of Piaget's theory on the education practice. Teachers should provide students with developmentally appropriate education. Here, the teacher should design his lessons and use teaching strategies in accordance with the student's age and stages of development, and they should be appropriate to the student's age and their development stages. The second implication is that the teacher should recognize self-initiated learning and active involvement of the students in learning activities. Here, the teacher should not play the role in which he transmits information, but rather the students discover information on their own. The last implication I have said is that teachers should accept individual differences in developmental progress, so he should assess his students' performance according to the progress they made, not according to the performance of the same age peers. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video, inshallah.